You know, I would go on peacefully with my life, but this topic has hounded me for nearly 2 decades thanks to the internet's most maidenless thinkers, chewing away at the communal foundation of this hobby until it's about ready to collapse. Trying to look for informative gaming content when it comes to industry news or game development is a nightmare outside the official channels like IGN because you're flooded with 100 takes about why insert demographic here are behind the fall of the industry or trying to gaslight you into thinking this woman is unattractive somehow. What am I talking about? The same thing you've probably seen a dozen other videos about, the woke content detector and its gaggle of feral offshoots that go after anything they deem woke, even though it seems pretty clear that what they mean by that word is there's a rainbow sticker in the game, and I hate those. Any reasonable person would agree that this kind of attitude is an exercise in making yourself absolutely miserable by denying yourself the pleasure of playing some incredible games just because you saw someone with a skin tone darker than Pantone 727 and transformed into that one bird tweet.
But Morgan, why can't you just talk about games? I don't like politics, sad face.
Yes, but I don't get the luxury of being apolitical, because being apolitical is simply the act of adhering to the status quo, which I inherently do not.
Gay!
As I said, the woke content detector list isn't the only one of its kind. There are many similar congregations trying to rub enough buzzwords together to generate a coherent ideology. They also hate anything that Sweet Baby Inc. has touched, no matter the quality, and also Weird Ghosts, which is a new one for me, so I looked it up, and Weird Ghosts is funding and support for underrepresented game makers. Wow, that's just awful. Terrible for gaming. Boy, howdy. What the hell is Sweet Baby Inc., you may ask? It's a narrative development and consultation studio based in Montreal, and if you've already guessed that they consult studios regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is what DEI stands for, then you are correct. Therefore, anything they touch is poison by default to a certain corrosive substrate of the gaming population. They really hate any kind of consultation company, to be honest. Look, I just want to have a good little ramble about this. Mostly I just want to dunk, because it's also terminally stupid, so we're gonna rapid fire through the entries that stood out to me the most. Let's get into it. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a cheeky wee comment. Recommended games that aren't political, apparently. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. This is odd to me because you play as a disabled man, which I thought was woke. The protagonist uses a prosthetic after getting his arm chopped off in the beginning. That makes him a disabled protagonist, still capable of fighting and defeating these incredibly dangerous and powerful enemies. But, you know, they liked the game, so it's fine. Final Fantasy XIII. There is absolutely no goddamn way, if this game came out now, these dudes would not be boiling their piss over Lightning or Fang or both, or the fact that Fang was originally a male character that was swapped with basically none of the writing changed, which is why she's like that with Vanille.
Gay!
Bayonetta. No woke content, but the whole theme of the game is women's sexual freedom and autonomy powering the protagonist's magic. The point sailed over their head and they don't want to ruin their horny memories of the game by replaying it. Soma. Recommended despite being ordered and led around by an Asian woman for most of the game, and the story heavily featuring philosophical questions and themes related to humanity, empathy, personhood, transhumanism, and quality of life, all of which are themes these keyboard gremlins would staunchly resist engaging with. Killing Floor 1 and 2. No woke content, even though there are multiple female characters you can play as who are fully capable of holding their own, fighting against terrifying and physically imposing super soldiers. But other games are woke for having improbable frontline fighters who are women. I guess if you enjoyed the game enough, it's not woke. Sons of the Forest, another example of them just ignoring a female fighter because you can arm the ballerina girl with a Glock and a shotgun and let her single-handedly wipe out enemy parties while she's been surviving on her own before then just fine without any weapons. I don't know, man, that sounds pretty improbable to me by your standards. Far Cry 2. Ah yes, no politics here, it's not like the game is based off Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness or anything. Oh wait! Conan Exiles. Not woke, despite the fact that, once again, you can play as a woman and fight things with zero issue when these same greasy little pests shriek upon seeing a game with women in frontline combat or in positions of military command like in Space Marine 2, but Exiles is fine. Sure. The Great Rebellion. Not political at all, you're just fighting to make Europa great again because there's a cyberpunk dystopia ruled over by a cast of right-wing nightmares like the Yas Queen, Jabbing Mantis, and the Transitioner, among others. Interesting how they need to make these hyper-exaggerated caricatures to make their point. It's not political though, this is what normal, everyday gamers want. Apparently. The First Descendant. This is good and not woke because, and I quote, even the most random female NPCs are gorgeous waifus. They are not escaping the Gooner allegations.
Just stop!
Informational games that are slightly woke, but you can still play them, I guess. Helldivers 2. The fact that something of note against this game isn't that it's one big satirical take on super America in space, and therefore critical of jingoism, propaganda, and imperialism, but the brief appearance of a mixed-race family in the intro. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Apparently, this absolutely timeless banger of a game is on thin ice because there's a light scattering of queer shit. Thin blood behavior. Strange horticulture. This one gets labeled as subtly anti-patriarchy, specifically because a wife left her abusive husband after he hit her. Interesting hill to die on, but alright. Elder Scrolls and Fallout games. They're just a little woke because mine are queer NPCs, but they like these games so they can't say not recommended. Knights of the Old Republic. Again, another banger of a game, a classic RPG, but it has subtly pro-LGBTQ messaging, and they mean the Juhani romance you have to dig for that is just barely there if you squint. Get the fuck out of my face with that. Not recommended games because people different from me are scary. Gary's Mod. It's bad now because of a blanket ban on Nazi content. There is no non-fash supporting explanation for this, and don't say censorship bad, because if you let one well-behaved Nazi into a bar, he'll bring his less polite friends until oopsie-daisy, everyone else that they hate has been pushed out and now you have a Nazi bar. Coral Island. It's bad because political flags, and they mean the rainbow flag hanging off the community center. This is what I meant when I said I can't be apolitical, because just existing is treated like an infection to be cleansed by these nerds. But also, you should play Coral Island. You can tell it was made by people who loved Stardew Valley but had copious notes to add, and it has a Southeast Asian aesthetic going on that you don't see in a lot of games. Think Philippines, Indonesia with a dash of Japan thrown in. Headliner, Novi News. It's woke because queer options and lack of gender distinction. The game is about controlling the news and freedom of speech. Any commentary of politics on that? No? Gay bad? Alright. Dustborn. There's a man knitting! But also they take issue with the politically driven intentions with the game, specifically the studio lead saying, no, fascism is bad actually. Apparently that's a political point that is just too far to hold. But remember, fighting a twerking black caricature called Yas Queen to make Europa great again is just making a cool non-DEI game with no politics. It's only politics if the roles are reversed, see? White dude bad, bad game. White dude good, good game. Very simple, very clear, very normal. These are the same people that throw a fit about censorship in video games. Games shouldn't be censored and devs should be allowed to make the games they want to make, but no, not like that, I don't like that! Darksiders 3. It's woke because the living embodiment of the sin of lust is depicted with an androgynous appearance, they them pronouns, and sounds neither fully masculine or feminine. As if the sin of lust would only be focused on the lust of heterosexual men, and not lust in all forms, because that makes you feel weird and icky? I'm sorry, is the concept of lust as sin, as something you should not do, meant to cater to you alone? What is the logic here? The Dead Space remake. I genuinely would not have known or remembered any of the tiny details these feckless dorks are mad about if it weren't for them crying, screaming, and sliding down the wall over it. Why are they mad? The bathrooms are unisex now. On the industrial spaceship, where space is a premium, they didn't keep the separated gendered bathrooms. That's why they think you shouldn't play this absolutely delectable remake. A bathroom sign. Psychroma. It was featured on the Weird Ghosts website, so it's bad. Pay no attention to the striking pixel graphics and old-school cyberpunk aesthetics, or if the story is even any good, supporting underrepresented developers is bad because, Far Cry 6. This isn't recommended because a transphobic villain dies after being explicitly transphobic to a trans character, therefore it's woke and political, but Far Cry 2 isn't. Lol. Lamau, even. South of Midnight. This isn't even out yet, but because Sweet Baby Inc. was involved, it's woke DEI garbage. You know, despite the fact that it has an interesting premise set in the Deep South, has a cool animation style, and looks fun, no, you're not allowed to play this because they, let me check my notes, made an active effort to ensure that they didn't screw up writing and designing a setting they may not be intimately familiar with. Being mindful of others? Scum. Silent Hill 2 remake. Nope, you're not allowed to play it. It had consultants from Hit Detection, which means it's bad. Please ignore all the high praise it got from pretty much everyone who actually played it. They were all bought and paid for by, quick look over there! State of Decay 3. Zoe Quinn is the narrative designer.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
Oh my god, let it go! It's been a decade since Gamergate kicked off over literal goddamn lies. I don't understand how someone can remain obsessively fixated on a stranger that they have never met. This is unwell behavior, stiff socks behavior, leaving skid marks on your bedsheets ass behavior. Please have a shower and start raising some shrimp, then maybe you'll feel a positive emotion for once. This pretty much goes for any game Zoe Quinn is involved in, regardless of the actual quality of the project. You want to play the VR game Alien Rogue Incursion because it looks fun and you get to be a colonial marine just trying to survive an obscene amount of bullshit? Too bad! Quinn was the lead narrative designer on that. No Alien VR for you if you want to avoid their woke cooties. If somehow you don't know who the hell Zoe Quinn even is, or you've heard of Gamergate but don't know exactly what happened, there's a great video by Innuendo Studios that lays it all out. Moving on. Jedi Survivor. It's not recommended because there's a couple of minor NPCs in town that are male and together. They even go on a date, just like any other couple would do. Horrible, traumatizing, scandalous!
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. It's bad because the presets for your pilot are overwhelmingly POC, even though, and I quote, 90% of pilots are white men. Damn, I didn't know Jeremy from Wisconsin flew for Qatar Airways. But to be clear, 90% of pilots are white men in the United States of America. You may be aware that there are many non-USA places in the world with their own pilots. Wisconsin Jeremy can't be everywhere, he's just not fast enough. But you know what? This reliance on quoting statistics out of context to make their points brings me to another section I like to call the part where I almost crash out over these idiots pretending to give a shit about facts and historical accuracy. We the Refugees. Portraying refugees as fellow human beings worthy of kindness and sympathy? You're saying it's based on real events and journalistic accounts? Clearly political and therefore bad. No further questions, please. Until Dawn. It's woke and DEI because a black man and an Asian woman are a couple, and according to Pew Research, Asian-black intermarriages make up less than 2% of all intermarriages, which means that they happen. 2% isn't none or never, it happens. It happens enough to make up 2% of intermarriages, so like, what's the problem? Please, explain it to the class. Assassin's Creed Odyssey. They're mad that Cassandra exists and claim that she was shoehorned in despite historical inaccuracy, even though Cassandra was meant to be the only option, and Ubisoft knew that these greasy little pests wouldn't have been able to handle that, so they put the dude in literally just to avoid the headache. So who's being sensitive again? King of the Castle.
Medieval game with pronouns.
Let's be real, the people who freak out over this do not care about how language works, how many languages have non-gender specific third-person pronouns, how many languages were influenced by colonialism to introduce gendered words, or that I, me, we, us, you, he, him, she, her, it, they, them are all personal pronouns. It's not about language, they just hate queer people. Vampire.
Historically inaccurate diversity in 1918 England.
I am going to start tweaking at this rate because these nerds are so painfully ignorant and unwilling to learn anything when a single Google search is all it takes. The British Empire spanned many countries for a long goddamn time, and that means that a lot of not white people ended up in England. Like, how do you think this worked? Dragon Age Veilguard.
Out of place diversity.
It's a fantasy setting about dragons and magic. This is a common theme for people like this, falling back on quote-unquote historical accuracy or some variation thereof, and the insincere nature of it will age me into an early grave. But then I'll just come back to haunt their asses, so it's fine, I guess. Dandara Trials of Fear. They don't like it because you're a black woman fighting against oppression, even though they acknowledge the character is based on a real person who fought against slavery, but they still consider it overtly pro-DEI because black woman protagonist, even though I thought these people cared about historical accuracy. Damn, who would have seen this coming? Lego Pirates of the Caribbean. Out of place diversity for the 17th, 18th century. It takes place in the Caribbean. What do you mean? They're also mad about the improbable female pirates, and you can't be serious. The most successful pirate in history was a Chinese woman, you ignorant weasels. Deathloop. It's bad because there are women leaders and black people, which is out of place for a setting inspired by the 1960s, as if women and black people weren't invented yet. But also, I'm pretty sure that the 1960s didn't also have a Groundhog Day Island, you insipid dorks. Far Cry Primal. It's bad because two male NPCs appear to be a gay couple cutely serenading each other in a field of flowers, since, as we all know, the gays were only invented in the 80s.
Also, I'm actually a historical expert on Mesolithic times, and there's no evidence to support acceptance of the homosexuals or of matriarchal societies during the Stone Age, because we
definitely know everything that there is to know about a time period 10,000 years in the past. Never mind that the game is littered with actual inaccuracies if you're actually interested in prehistoric Europe, for example. Most of the animals that we consider iconic to this area would not have been found in Europe. Woolly mammoths and rhinos especially didn't belong in the forested region of Oros, being much more suited to frigid grasslands and tundra, and any that did make their home in European forests were extinct before the game's time frame. Eurasian cave lions were also already extinct before the game's time by like 2,000 or so years, and cave bears went extinct about 12,000 years before. The language spoken by our Mesolithic characters here is based off a theoretical Proto-Indo-European that most likely wouldn't have reached the game's region until like 7,000 years later. But no, we've got to specifically take issue with the idea of one matriarchal tribe and a couple of gay dudes for the sake of, historical accuracy. God of War Ragnarok. They're mad because Kratos was written with complex emotional weight and conflate that with being weak. They're also mad that Thor isn't depicted as their hyper-masculine golden-haired ubermensch, but fat like a powerlifter. How dare anyone interpret mythology different from what I personally prefer? They are, additionally, also mad that Angerboda is imagined here as a black girl when, as far as I can tell, she is sparingly mentioned in historical texts, and barely described beyond being a giant and a mother of monsters. Do not try to tell me that you care about historical accuracy in a fucking God of War game after we gutted the Greek pantheon in the old games, not to mention that Kratos himself was intentionally designed to stand out rather than embody a typical Greek hero. Gloomhaven. It's a magical grim dungeon crawler with ghouls, rat people, and literal magic, but this is a medieval setting, so all this diversity garbage is out of place and needs to be explained to my satisfaction. Justify why there's a black character in this fantasy game. What do you mean wizards aren't real? I know plenty of them. Hades 2. They're mad because the race-swapping Greek gods, even though the Greek gods were able to shapeshift into different forms, plants, animals, people, but the folk who get up in arms about this think ancient Greece was some kind of Mediterranean hyperborea of pristine whiteness when, no, it wasn't. It really, really wasn't. One of them is in a wheelchair! It's Hephaestus. He's the god of forges, blacksmiths, artisans, and metallurgy, among others. What do you think it takes to create a wheelchair and prosthetic limbs? Not to mention, he was thrown off Mount Olympus for being lame, i.e. disabled. Hephaestus, in the mythology you claim to care about so much, was cast out by the gods for being physically impaired. But he's a god, why doesn't he just fix himself? Mythology is about telling stories, you absolute dweebs. Humans project their own flaws, morals, and concerns in the stories we tell each other, and that applies just as readily to gods. Being able to just snap your fingers like Q and do whatever you want to reality is boring as hell because nothing matters then. Not that these insufferable gremlins actually care about that, they just want to be the only people games are made for and are desperately trying to make it as hostile as possible so everyone else leaves.
I think the fuck not, you trick-ass bitch.
And with that, we are done with this video. I'll never be done with this topic, though, because it feels like every week there's another terminally stupid argument started by the most insufferable dweebs on this planet, and none of us can ever escape. But for right now, I've exorcised the demons from my system. Mostly. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment down below for the algorithm gods. Special shout out to my supporters over on Patreon who are all very handsome people. If you'd also like to be called a very handsome people, check out the link in the description where you can support me from just £1 a month. All tiers get their name in the credits, while members of the nerd tier will occasionally get behind the scenes previews and video teasers. If you enjoy live streaming, I can be found over on Twitch where I stream every Wednesday at 8 PM British time. For now, don't forget to drink your water, take your medication, be kind to yourselves, and I will see you all next time.